When the Triumph Trident 800 here was first announced, it was coincided with a second announcement that the Street Triple R would be phased out of the lineup, replaced by this thing because it was built on a lot of its same bones. Dutifully, the keyboard warriors of the cult of the Street Triple sharpened their pitchforks and lit the torches, ready to decry this thing heretical because there was no possible way a motorcycle featuring a tubular steel frame could ever live up to their iconic Street Triple. That motorcycle was carved in marble by the Lord High Emperor of Speed himself and given to humanity by his grace. I, however, am not a part of the Street Triple cult, and I can admit that while the Street Triple is perhaps one of the best go-fast platforms you can spend your money on right now, it's not a particularly great street bike. So when I saw this thing at EICMA and it was claiming 113 horsepower, 62 foot-pounds of torque, and around 450 pounds wet and ready to ride with a $10,000 price tag, I got excited. This thing very quickly became one of my most anticipated bikes of 2026. The question is, could this thing possibly live up to the high bar that I had set for it? And there's really only one way to find out, so let's go hit the road. First and foremost, I'm noticing a lot more grunt out of this motor initially than I was getting out of a Street Triple. Street Triples tended to feel really linear, but this thing, it definitely feels like it's geared to be a little bit more aggressive right off the jump. Specifically, when you're in sort of the middle, the meat of the power band, right around 6,000 RPM, which I think most people are going to spend their time cruising at, there's a good surge of power right there. It's fun. It's easy to ride. Yeah, get after it, little Street Triple. And I said Street Triple, but it feels like what I would want a Street Triple to be, which is kind of funny because when I gave away my Street Triple, right before we got the giveaway XSR 900, link for that in the comments, by the way, I basically built one of these on the back of a Street Triple. One of the things that's the biggest surprise to me on here is the brakes. I was not expecting these brakes to feel as sharp and as aggressive as they are. I mean, the ABS was doing the thing and the bike was like, wee, it's squirrely. But I could just wail on that lever and slow this bike down like I'm at a racetrack. I am having so much more fun on this than I have any other Triumph right out of the gate. I am really digging this bike, man. So let's get this thing on the side of the road, because as much fun as I'm having with this bike, there are some problems that we do need to talk about. So I shouted some specs at you in the intro, but this thing is packing a 798cc triple that's putting down 113 horsepower, 62 foot-pounds of torque, and weighs in at 436 pounds wet and ready to ride. And while this thing does have a much more relaxed seating position than the Street Triple, I do have an issue with the ergonomics, and I gotta show it to you. Right here on the tank, where this black cutout piece goes back into the gray outer panel, there's actually kind of a sharp angle here that my knee keeps running into. If I mount up, you can see that this inside part of my knee here is basically right in line with this edge, and that becomes annoying after a while. It's worth pointing out that I have a 32-inch inseam and I am 6'3", so if you're shorter than me, you probably won't have that issue. Another thing to mention here while we're talking about the tank is I do not like the flat gray on any of these panels. I've seen it in person in the red, and it just looks so much nicer than this cheap primer gray right here. Not a big fan of this, and I really wish that manufacturers would move away from it. Especially when you see those nice gold wheels. The gray flat paint job just looks kind of cheap and like an afterthought. The bike definitely would be suited with some nice flashy colorways, something like that sort of flaky blue that's on the XSR 900. Again, link to get entered to win that thing in the description. Last thing on the looks, I'm not a huge fan of this gap right here between the bikini fairing thing up at the front and the actual headlight, I feel like that could probably have been done better. From the front, it looks okay, but from the side, it just looks sort of unfinished. Again, this big empty gap here just looks goofy. I talked about the brakes and the suspension already on the twisties, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. Suffice it to say, they're solid, but most of the touch points on this bike feel good. They feel a little bit more premium than I was expecting for a bike that is functionally now the like entry-level go fast motorcycle. I know people are going to ask, does it feel more premium than the XSR 900? Yeah, it kinda does. The exception to that would be the dashboard right here. I've never been a big fan of this Triumph round dashboard thing on here. It looks kinda cheap, but it gives me all of the information that I need at a glance. But if that dashboard is a sticking point for you, I actually may have a solution. I used to be way harsher on motorcycles that have kind of underwhelming displays because when you think about it, TFTs are everywhere and they're not really all that expensive to put on a motorcycle. So while the Trident's dash may be a little bit underwhelming, the beauty is you can add a completely separate updated TFT with this Chigee right here. This thing is a completely universal dashboard that you can put on any motorcycle. Not only is it a full color TFT touchscreen display with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto built in, but this thing comes with forward and rearward facing dash cams that will act as a blind spot monitor and warn you on the screen if anybody's creeping up on your blind spot. But it's not just that. This thing can pair up to some tire pressure monitors, and you can also pair it with an OBD scanner to pull data directly off of your motorcycle. And remember, this thing can be installed on any motorcycle, and as you can see here, the AIO6 is easy to remove, so if you've got multiple cradles, you can swap this thing from bike to bike in seconds. If any of that sounds good to you, click the link down in the description below where you can check out everything that Chigee has to offer and use the code SPICECORNER to get 10% off. But I could sit here and nitpick all afternoon, or we could head out on the highway and see how this thing would treat you if you're commuting on it. And that sounds like more fun to me. This is, I think, by far the weakest place to take this motorcycle, just because triples generally are very buzzy at highway speeds, and this motorcycle is no different. It is just kind of this power plant's cross to bear. You can get up into like 6th gear, and I'm cruising at 70 miles an hour in 6th gear, 5,000 RPM, and there's still buzz going on in the bars. It's not irritating, but if I were to pick up the pace, even by like 10 miles an hour, those vibrations are getting more aggressive, sharper, more irritating. There's also no wind protection really to speak of. Yeah, you've got this little speed screen, but it's just gonna drop it right here, kind of at my belly, which is fine for me. I'd prefer to have clean air around my head, and I would actually get rid of these mirrors and probably put on some of those like blade style mirrors. I've actually kind of grown to really like those, the Rizoma Stealths, or, you know, if you're so inclined, some bar end mirrors would be fine. But the seat is comfy, the bike is stable at speed. You're noticing probably some extra wobble. I'm going into a headwind, the suspension is not set for me, and I have that camera off the end of the stick. So your mileage will be better than mine. We also have included cruise control, which is really simple. It's just one button on, one button set, and then they've got the roll forward to kill. I appreciate that it doesn't reuse a bunch of these buttons here. You know, you just set it, and then if you want to keep setting it, you set it like, all right, let's set it at 60, and then if I want to speed it up, I just twist the throttle some more, find my new speed, set it, and that's my new cruising speed. Would I want to ride this thing on the highway all day? No. But if you're commuting, you know, 10, 15, 20 miles on the highway to get to work, no big deal. And I just love that cruise control is now standard on bikes at $10,000. That's freaking awesome. Let's start wrapping my thoughts up on this bike. Now, if I'm going to start rounding out my thoughts on this motorcycle, the best thing I can think to do is to sit here and twist the knife a little bit when it comes to those street triple folks. They do have one thing right. this thing is not a replacement for the Street Triple R. It's its own motorcycle, and honestly, I think it's better for it. I would never really recommend that somebody run out and grab a Street Triple R when the RS is on the showroom floor next to it with better suspension, more power, and blah, blah, blah. This thing for 10 grand, it's such a great ride. And it does the thing that Street Triples are kind of bad at. It just is playful. It's fun. It's got this just quality of let's go goof around. This thing, I could easily recommend it to anybody who wants a kick-ass street bike that's not going to break the bank, that they could easily take on a twisty road or a racetrack or go do anything they want with. This is like the first real jack-of-all-trades motorcycle that I've seen from Triumph, and it looks good doing it, whereas the Street Triple doesn't. I'm sorry. Like, don't get me wrong. The suspension could be improved. The brakes, the master cylinder could be better. But the power delivery and the fun factor is just off the charts for the price. And I've had so many accidental wheelies on this thing today. Nothing big, nothing where I'm looking at the sky, but these just nice floater wheelies where I get on the power and I'm floating that wheel for like 50 feet. And I feel like it's kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, because it's so much more capable than it would seem, and that those, guys on the forums would have you think. Because, oh, it's got a tube steel frame. Like we're still building them the same way we did in the 80s. But no, man, this is a 2 thumbs up for me. And while I wouldn't buy it in the gray, I feel like the gray is a little too cheap. The red would be awesome. A flaky blue would be awesome. The white that you see in the Street Triples would be awesome. This is just one of those bikes that I think Triumph is going to sell a lot of. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.